On the 15th of November 2016, 21 communication students from Deakin University set off on a study tour. The purpose of this study tour was to give students a first-hand encounter and experience with public relations in an Asian country. This allowed students to take their learnings from a classroom out into the real world and see how their learning is put into practice, both back home as well as in the overseas environment which they found themselves in, which can sometimes have different beliefs and customs. Our first stop on our study tour was to Georgetown, Penang. On our first full day there, we took part in the Penang Amazing Race. This saw us put into groups with other students within the study tour. Some of them we hadn't even met yet, and others we'd maybe spoken to on the plane. We had to go around with only a map and some clues to find different pieces of street art around the great city. Being in these groups of hardly even knowing each other really put us to the test of problem solving and communication straight away. Our group quickly understood who was best with directions and others who were better with solving the riddles. From there, as a group, we decided on our direct paths to each individual piece of artwork. We battled through the heat and humidity as a team together, all looking out for each other, making sure we had enough sunscreen on as well as we were staying hydrated. As a result of our great teamwork and communication, the group felt a lot closer together already, and were able to swap and share stories with other groups who were also feeling the same way, and left the whole entire group feeling excited and wondering what was to lie ahead. One of our next activities was industry visits around Penang. One of these visits was to the Penang World Heritage Centre, where a former Deakin student was now working. We heard about the day-to-day structure of his chosen field within public relations, as well as some of the exciting parts about working within the public relations industry as a part of the UNESCO World Heritage listings of Penang. He broke his role down into 4 different parts, but highlighted the 4th part, the celebration of their planning and events, as his most enjoyable aspect of his role. Our next stop was Penang State Government, where we had the opportunity to listen and speak to state officials. We heard about some of the programs that they are trying to implement currently within their state and how they're going about reaching their communities. One of their planning techniques really stood out to me. Instead of looking at the end plan and the end goal, they would start at the very bottom of the plan, dealing with the direct publics rather than planning techniques to communicate their ideas to them. Instead, they started with the direct publics and worked with them to what they wanted to see and what they needed and what they wanted, rather than assuming. One of our final visits was to the Penang Global Tourism Organisation. I really feel I got a lot out of this visit. We had the opportunity to speak to multiple departments within their organisation, and thanks to this, we were able to get a greater understanding of what they were trying to do, as well as what their future endeavours and targets were for bringing tourism and tourists to Penang.
We've just arrived at UUM in the student accommodation. It's warm, but we're coping with it. The boys are all playing a few cards, and we're off to dinner later tonight with the rest of the conference.
The conference at UUM was something different. We heard from both communication students and lecturers as they presented to us their papers and theses. It was interesting to listen to presenters from different countries and to understand the differences in communication practices that go on within their own country. At times we did have difficulties with the language barrier. There was a moment where I asked a question to one of the presenters regarding his engagement theories, but he couldn't understand me, so we had to use Google Translate. Thanks to Google Translate, we eventually got through the language barrier and began to have a proper discussion about his paper. I asked him whether he considered Maslow's theory of needs and motivations when considering his engagement theories. He hadn't actually heard of Maslow from his teachings, and it was something he was keen to check out to enhance his final year paper. On our last night at the conference, we had a cultural dinner where all countries were invited to wear their traditional dress. Us being Australians, though, didn't have a traditional dress to wear, but it was still great to look around and see so many different countries and so many different traditional dresses. We also got to witness a couple of traditional dances, as well as getting to learn an Indonesian traditional dance. We eventually made it to Kuala Lumpur, where we'd spend the next 2 weeks of our study tour. Our first night there, and we were eager to see what the big city had to offer. We had a fantastic Chinese meal down Jalana Law before some of us found the pavilion and their magical Christmas display. A visit to the National Muslim Museum was a big highlight for me. I'm glad I took the time to check out the exhibit. Not only did I get a greater understanding of Muslim culture, but also a greater understanding of their beliefs and values. We further immersed ourselves in the culture of Kuala Lumpur by going to see Mud the musical. Here we watched the musical of Kuala Lumpur's history. We learnt right back from when it was a tin mine town to the modern day that we know of KL today. Next up on our tour were more industry visits. One of our first ones was to the palm oil producer Siam Darby. Many of the group were quite apprehensive about what to expect going to such a place, considering our knowledge of what palm oil plantations do to orangutans. For me, some of these concerns began to subside as I listened to the presentation further. Siam Darby was quite a sustainable organisation, as we saw further when we actually went to visit the plantation. Looking back now, this was a bit of a highlight for me during the study tour, going to the plantation and seeing the different stages of what the fruit from the palm tree becomes, followed by a demonstration of how they harvest the fruits from the palm tree, as well as their sustainable rodent management system, which was the use of barn owls. Our next stop was one I'd been looking forward to from the moment I saw the itinerary, that of course being the Heineken Brewery. Not only did we get to learn how the beer was made, but also we got an understanding of the difficulties there are selling alcohol in a Muslim-based country. It was clear that this wasn't affecting sales, but it was interesting to learn that their production was purely for domestic use. Learning of this really made me stop and think. It made me realise how much tourism is a vital part of Malaysian life. In between our busy days, we tried to use as much downtime as possible to see the sights of the city. The Petronas Towers were a particular highlight for me. For others, it was the shopping. While we were there, we also had opportunities to visit other universities, such as UITM, as well as Taylor's University. It was interesting to see the differences between public and private universities. The private universities seemed to be a lot closer to the Muslim beliefs and values, whereas the private universities felt very westernised and very close to home. We made some great friends during our visits to these universities, particularly the Taylor students, who took us out and saw some of the sites after hours. The rest of the tour wasn't all fun and games, but we still had to visit some more industries. The next 2 industries were quite conflicting from one another. Malaysia Kini, a free speech media organisation, and the federal government's Department of Information. During our visit to Malaysia Kini, we heard about some of their struggles, as in particular their editor being charged just a couple of days before our visit. They spoke of the importance, though, of wanting to get the truth and the news out there for all to hear and to hold those accountable. This left me feeling quite grateful, as I had to realise that we didn't have to worry about things like that in Australia. The experience also left me a little bit excited, wanting to know what it was going to be like once we visited the Department of Information. I wasn't quite sure what to expect once we got to the department, whether it would be guards at every door or very tight security. I just wasn't sure. When we arrived, there was a camera crew as well as a media team following our every move. It was quite an interesting feeling to feel so important. After a photo ceremony, we eventually got down to business. It was intriguing to see how the government was trying to connect with the people in their country. Their planning and strategies differed a little bit to that of the Penang State Government that we had visited earlier. Rather, their visits to remote areas were highly covered so that everyone was aware of the good work they were doing. It was almost over the top. The final element of our tour was our internship. I was lucky enough to Go International and to be given some real hands-on work working with More, a cosmetic and hand cream company from Australia. I was set the task of finding ways that we could engage publics within the Avenue K shopping area and boost sales. It was a great opportunity to put what I'd learned in the classroom into real life situations. The whole experience left me wanting to do more and wanting to stay on to see the project through. I think this is a great indicator to show that I'm studying something I really want to do as a career. This brought our tour to an end. We finished with a farewell dinner and reminisced of the great times that we had. I am so grateful to have experienced such a remarkable trip. I have learnt skills that I'll take with me into my studies and hopefully into my career, as well as the experiences that will allow me to stand out in a competitive job field.